Hello, everyone. My name is Iliad Terra, and I am the CEO and Managing Principal of alfa8. I'm also a co-chair of Buildings and Urban Design Solutions Group for Connect DMV. And I've been working with TIDES and CRASC for a number of years on resiliency issues. This session is focused on food security and its implication in our region and nationally. A little bit of background on what our company does. alfa8 is an urban design, architecture, and planning firm with a focus on integrating technology and innovation as part of our design solution. And for the past number of years, we've been working on really resiliency issues that impact our region, and how do we bring design leadership for resiliency solutions. And we've been working, as I mentioned, with Mason and TIDES, as well as with the public sector in Virginia and Maryland and the district, as well as institutions. And a number of private sectors have been part of our conversations. So this session is designed to give a broad overview of what we think about in terms of resilience and our approach, and then focus on food security and how it impacts our region and the solutions that we may have available to us. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is share my screen here, and we can dive into a slide presentation to walk us through this presentation. So what is really, in terms of, let me get back to the beginning here. Okay, so food security is the topic of our conversation, and so really, let's backtrack and discuss what are the issues that impact food security. One of the approaches that we've been focused on is understanding threats to our communities and our cities to be multi-vector and compound. In many cases, it's not a singular threat that impacts us, but a number of complex scenarios that layer on top of each other and really impact us, as is the case currently, as the world is going through in response to COVID. So some of these threats are obviously climate change, global warming, sea level rising, but also episodic spikes like hurricanes and tornadoes, fires. Other threats that may arise in conjunction with that would be civil unrest, demographic displacement, population displacement, health issues, et cetera, that may arise as a consequence or independent of that. In addition to that, technology is pervasive in our societies, in our world right now. Everything is dependent. So cyber threats, compounding on scenarios, whether it's weaknesses within our infrastructure, or it may be intentional attacks that further complicate the threat profile. And then, of course, biological hazards, whether it's COVID-19 or other impacts that will affect a population. So usually, in more than not, the scenarios are compounded, and so we have to back up and look at this holistically and see how this relates both reactively and proactively. So what are the impacts? Why do these compounded threats impact our communities and our cities and the way they do? And one of the indicators is how we have structured our systems, if you will, whether it's our institutions or policies or infrastructure. And oftentimes it's really a rigid system in terms of our response, where Our systems are isolated, they're siloed, they're thinking independent of each other, acting independent of each other. They're frequently disjointed and fractured. And so we've got rigid systems that are not pliable, that are faced with these multi-vector threats that then impact our systems. And as the consequence are devastations and failure to respond adequately, and tragedies and loss of life, loss of property, etc. And it has variable impacts on depending on the community. Sometimes it's changes the direction of the entire community or the country. Sometimes it takes for a long time for that community to recover, if they can fully recover. So this really brings us to the question of, what do we do? What's available to us? How are we addressing the future legacy, if you will, as leaders, as private sector, as institutions? What keeps us up at night? And so, are there solutions? Are there lessons learned? How do we manage? Do we need to think outside the box? Is it asymmetric thinking? What do we need to bring in to address? Is it business as usual? We're going to accept this, or are there solutions and innovations in place? So one thing that we think is really a lesson or a solution or a guide for us, and something that we've used all through human civilization, is really revisiting natural patterns in terms of responding to these crises, if you will. So what do you find? How do forests and forest communities and plant life and natural ecosystems rebound? And what are the mechanisms that they leverage, use, or have put in place that can help them recover or thrive? So one thing that we've noticed is that there's a redundancy in natural systems. They're not isolated. They're not a pyramidal structure top down. They are redundant structures and organizations and systems. And the systemic way is very interconnected. So, and it's adaptable and it's resilient and it's pliable as a result of this. It's a horizontal system, if you will. So these forms we see over and over again in nature, and it's allowing it to survive and adapt to threats and trauma and change, and even predict it and be responsive to it. So it's not just reactive, but it's proactive systems that are in place. So we feel that learning from nature and the natural systems then can revisit in a spiral process, if you will, in a fractal evolutionary path of innovation, the systems that we have in place, whether it's policy, governance, decisions, technology, infrastructure. So the solutions are here. This is nothing new, but it needs to be decisive, and we need to step into that. So a holistic attitude and a holistic process that really integrates different systems, and as we issued, as the threat profile is compound and multi-vector, then the solutions need to adapt in the same way, be integrated and holistic, and respond to this dynamically. So essentially it takes a community of innovations, of sectors and pillars to come together and collaborate to find those solutions. So these are all within our reach. This is processes and technologies that we have available to us right now that we can put in place in respond to, and we are in many ways, to the challenges of COVID, to other climate change, other issues that are facing our communities, both in the United States and overseas, in developing markets and countries, and communities, rural communities within the US, and urban population centers. So we have the solutions. But let's focus as a topic of this conversation to one specific area, and that's food security. And how COVID and how these challenges have impacted, and what is the ground reality in the United States, for example, vis-a-vis food access and food security, and the threats that are facing, and the ground reality that many in this country are challenged with every day. So the overarching question is, why are people malnourished and starving in the richest country in the world, in the United States? And is that a reality, or is that an exaggeration? So this, we all know that whether it's rural communities, whether it's urban communities, the United States is not immune to hunger. We often look at developing in markets and countries overseas, in Africa, in Asia, in South Central America, etc. But we have the same problem here in the United States. This is in Iowa. This is a reality. An article that was written by National Geographic. This is in New York City, in communities that are struggling to feed themselves, and not only that, but receive the right kind of nutrients and nourishment that's healthy, and it's not all dominated by processed foods. This is a very painful reality across this country, where access to food and resources is impacted by poverty and lack of resources in terms of transportation, in communities that are predominantly vehicular in their nature and their planning. So there's a major struggle for families to get access to food resources. This is a map of Baltimore, and we're actually involved, and I'll show in a second, a project that we're working in the city of Baltimore to really address this issue. And so the map on the left shows pre-COVID, really the unemployment concentration and the employment concentration in the city of Baltimore and the surrounding communities. And in correspondence to that, you've got the food deserts in the city of Baltimore. And you can see there's a correlation there. This is pre-COVID, and the situation has further exacerbated. Unemployment has spiked. And you know, the cascade of this in terms of healthcare and food resources, employment, education, all of this, it's exacerbated. So we are involved with a particular project that we're working with Johns Hopkins University and a nonprofit organization called Men and Family Center, which focuses on bringing resources to men and understanding that men have been underserved in these communities. And then by default, then the families of these men, their children, their spouses, et cetera, the whole community is provided for. So what this organization does is provide healthcare, education, and food distribution. And the need and the demand for food distribution has spiked. So one of the things that we've done is we are renovating, modernizing the facility, bringing telemedicine and teleeducation resources to them. But the other thing is that we're looking at sites within the block, interstitial sites within the block, to be converted to urban farming and food storage resources for the community. So as you can see, this particular block, there are empty, underutilized sites within this 2 blocks, but there are a number of these units here are empty and vacant, neglected, and this is just throughout Baltimore, that can be then captured and brought in as resources to provide for the community. So we have started developing, renovating this concepts for the resource center. But in addition to that, developing food storage, food distribution, and urban farming modules for this block that then can be replicated throughout the city and elsewhere. So we're very excited about that. Johns Hopkins is part of this conversation, and the circle of conversation will expand with a press release that we're positioned to release at the end of this month. So focusing on really food security, in terms of what is essentially the supply chain and how is food produced and harvested and stored and processed and then transported to the end users, whether these are consumers, restaurants, or businesses, and different markets, urban markets, or and developing regions, peri-urban markets. So there are a number of areas of concentration. The field production itself. How do we start addressing technology, low technology interventions, controlled environments? How do we bring smart ag and sophisticated technology? And of course, vertical farming. So we're going to touch quickly on some of these solutions that are available that we can start thinking about for our urban environments, and in particular, in this case, that we're focused in Baltimore. One of the first steps really is looking at how we consume food and how it's processed and how it's transported, really having a very clear perspective on that. One thing that I'd like to bring our attention to is food transportation. And so, what does it cost? This is not simply just a GHG on food transportation, but really the spoilage of food, the time it takes, access while it's in transit, and to communities, and the price escalation as part of the transportation. All of this just in one node of consideration. So as we start looking into different innovations in food production and all of this, we can start seeing opportunities of how existing technology, existing policy immediately can impact food access to these communities and starting enriching and creating economic incentives. So that's examining the current situation clearly is a first step. The other one is we all know that there's a stampede of young people running away from agriculture and farming. So there's two-step process in here. One, building a relationship, putting faces to the small farmers, mid-sized farmers, engaging that so the community understands the process, whether it's from school children to adult populations. The market becomes aware and builds a relationship with the farming community, with the producers, the processors, the distributors, and this becomes an important fabric and ingredient in the understanding of how communities thrive. The other one is really re-educating, leveraging technology, innovation to attract young people through STEM program or through microfinancing or through business innovations to start bringing smart agriculture in urban communities. And so there is an opportunity to start re-educating that, rebranding that, and revisiting what farming and what food really means in terms of its overall impact on our communities, including health and what it can do in terms of save healthcare costs, reduce healthcare expenses because of a better solution. So in here, GFCC, which is a Global Federation of Competitiveness Council, developed a 12-step set of technologies, integrated approach. And again, these are existing technologies. These are not future aspirations, but these are technologies and innovations that are currently available to the agriculture industry, to our communities, to our innovators, to the private sector, public sector, to inform policy. So quickly, from connectivity and platforms of mobility and financial technology, fintech, and et cetera, to how do we Uberize this? How do we transport, use crowd transportation systems to start developing a network that works together? Precision agriculture, controlled environment, blockchain in terms of bringing transparency, using new modalities of energy, microgrids, store, power walls, etc. How do we start addressing seeds, high performing seeds, and using nanotechnology with that, enhanced genetics, biotechnology, microbiome editing, soil biologicals, alternative proteins, plants as factories for drugs, and then of course meat substitutions. So it's just, we are at the cusp of an explosion of innovations. Excuse me. Nanotechnology in terms of seed coating, produce coating, edible nano coating, and then of course one thing that we're very excited in is 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and mixed reality in terms of education and engagement. But this is an exciting front both for at the consumer level and at the industrial level, not only in production and parts production and machinery, but also in new food products, energizing and activating and innovating. So it's an exciting new foray that we're in the middle of. Of course, you know, hybrid intervention of new tech with underutilized technology, on and off grid usage that can start gradually migrating. This chart, I brought it in really for a newer and more granular look at the biological and the communities, microbial communities that we can start understanding. And of course, philospheric and endospheric communities we've reached, and we have a certain understanding, and we're working with that. One thing that's really becoming exciting is the opportunities that are presented, our deeper understanding in the resiferic communities, and especially mycelia and the fungi, and what that's making available to us in terms of how communities, plant communities, and farms and forests thrive, communicate, associated with each other. So this is a frontier territory and it's an exciting set of opportunities that are evolving from that. We touched on seeds. Let's really look into partnerships that we can develop new seeds or enhance and hybrid seeds that perform better. This is again available to us, not necessarily GMO, but in many ways there's significant opportunities within that. Of course, we all know about the imperfect produce and food. This is an area that we can start re-educating and visiting in how we can relate to produce and not waste necessarily. So this again is a new shift that we can bring in terms of branding and engagement. We touched on 3D printing. This is one product, Foodini, but there's a whole host of them, both industrial and at the consumer level, that creates amazing new possibilities. For example, in this case, you know, how do we create alternative foods from ingredients such as protein from algae and beet leaves or even insects into palatable, tasty products, and opening new resources for communities. We touched on a new area of the mycelia, which is again a frontier, and how this can impact positively. Again, we can expand on this further. So these are innovations from robotics to new areas of research, new ingredients, etc. And then one area that as a final slide, that we feel very excited about is really repositioning and renovating, repurposing urban infrastructure, parking garages, office buildings, industrial buildings that are delinquent or empty or vacant or now going to be underutilized. So how do we bring this and start creating vertical urban farms using smart technology, aeroponics and hydroponics, aquaponics, all of this technology that is now available. This is deployed in different markets throughout the world. So as a matter of policy, we can start revisiting these, and in a private, public-private partnership with developers and owners and communities, we can start identifying these locations that can then be converted into vertical urban farms, which not only will bring produce and fresh vegetables and food and nourishment to the communities, but also spawn and inspire small businesses that could come in and participate, lease out, sublease racks locations in these urban farms, in some similar ways to how a data center and colo data center leases space to technology companies and server space. So these are just a broad overview of some of the issues that are impacting resilience and really how we can rebound and address some of these pain points that we are suffering with and our communities are impacted with. And then really the technologies that are here available to us, not only in terms of technology, but in terms of really revisiting our policy to become more horizontal and redundant and resilient, pliable in face of these challenges. We all are familiar with the issues in terms of the ventilators in early stages of the COVID crisis. And so it became very quickly apparent that we had surplus of these ventilators in many locations, yet we did not have that connectivity. We didn't have that redundancy to know. We didn't have that situational awareness. We didn't know who was doing what. So there was a lot of confusion in that process. And that's just one node that we can focus in. So extrapolate this into food products and resources and innovation and processes that can, and how communities can be empowered and rethought. So that kind of is really an overview of what we're doing, what the process that we're involved with. We are developing white papers and sourcing technologies and engaging policymakers to address some of these concerns. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions at the breakout session, and I look forward to chatting then. Thank you.